It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Now, freedom was the keyword of President Yoon Suk-yeol's inauguration speech, mentioned 35 times throughout his address on Tuesday. Protecting freedom set the tone for how Yoon's administration would tackle the slew of issues that South Korea faces, from social and income disparities, economic growth and innovation, to dealing with North Korea as well as Seoul's place in global governance. So can you make South Korea a beacon of freedom and liberal democracy in the world over the next 5 years, as he envisions? To answer this question, today we invite Professor Gi-Wook, Director of the Walter H. Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center at Stanford University. Very warm welcome to you, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
So good morning, and thanks for having me in this program.
Thank you so much. And well, my first question to you, Professor. Now, President Yoon Suk-yeol, he began his term with a very polarized public opinion towards his presidency. I mean, there have been concerns that Yoon, with his rather elitist background and key appointments as well, is going to be out of touch with the South Korean public. So, in your opinion, what must he do to prove that he is up to the job?
Okay, so before addressing that question, let me congratulate Mr. Yoon to be Korean president, and my best wishes for him and his administration. You're right that he grew up in a middle-class family, and he attended really top elite program in Korea, which is a law school in Seoul National University. And then, he was a career prosecutor, very powerful position in Korean society. And if you look at his key appointments so far, okay, they are very able, experienced people. Also, Yoon Suk-yeol has been promoting or speaking about meritocracy. So I think these are, on the one hand, very good developments. At the same time, as you point out, that some people are a little concerned that there's a lack of diversity, and also, he may be, out of touch from the public. And certainly, he has to remember that he's not anymore a bureaucrat or prosecutor, but he's a politician who has to deal with a diverse group of people. So certainly, I think your concerns are quite, valid, but still, I'd like to give him benefit of doubt. And I think especially his personality might actually help him to interact more actively and friendly with the people. So I think compared to, let's say, President Park Geun-hye or Moon Jae-in, who are, I guess, a little bit shy in personality, but looks like Mr. Yoon is more outgoing, in a person. And I think this may be, Konglish, but then, Korean people saying about skinship. So sounds like, or looks like he is quite, doing pretty well, having skinship with, Korean people. So, despite those concerns, once again, I'd like to give him some benefit of doubt in the first couple of years.
Right, and the new president did emphasize how he'd be approaching his presidency with openness and more human interactions, as you mentioned, Professor. And well, more on what he said during his speech. Actually, Professor, before we go to say, you have a book coming out next month, and that's called South Korea's Democracy in Crisis, which highlights the threat of illiberalism, populism, and polarization in recent years, not just in South Korea, but around the world, of course. But what was notable about President Yoon Suk-yeol's speech was that he emphasized the importance of liberal democracy, as opposed to the Moon administration, which sort of omitted using the word liberal. So what do you make of this change?
Frankly speaking, I don't think his speech was the most moving speech. Okay, but still, I think he hit the right point in his speech, especially his emphasis on freedom, because I think now we are at a very critical juncture in terms of preserving and protecting a liberal democracy at home and abroad. As you mentioned in my book, I've been talking about threats of illiberalism as well as populism and polarization. I've been speaking out about erosion of liberal democracy in South Korea for last few years. And despite high expectation for upgrading the democracy, I don't think liberal democracy has thrived under Moon Jae-in government. So certainly we have to enhance or promote liberal democracy at home. At the same time, liberal democracy is under threat globally, especially after Russian invasion of Ukraine. There are growing concern about threatening liberal democracy in the world. So I think my colleague and also myself including, we are really quite concerned about growing tension between liberal democracy and autocracy. Okay, autocracy represented by Russia, China, and a few other countries. So therefore, Korea is really at a very important position to preserve and protect liberal democracy at home and also abroad. So in this regard, I believe Yoon Suk-yeol's speech was on the right spot, and I fully agree with what he was saying in his speech.
Right, and of course, Yoon also stressed the importance of overcoming social division and polarization with what he said was the universal value of freedom. And also, well, over the past few years, achieving fairness in society, it's been one of the major changes that all South Koreans wanted to see. But many had their hopes dashed over the past 5 years as Moon's own party members, former President Moon Jae-in's own party members were caught up in Me Too scandals, a slew of nepotism scandals as well. So how critical is it going to be for new President Yoon Suk-yeol to address social justice and corruption, and how should he go about doing so?
Well, I think this is very important, but very difficult issue to tackle. When Korean economy was growing and there was a good social mobility, this was much less an issue. But now it's becoming more and more important. And 5 years ago, when then President Moon Jae-in gave his speech, he highlighted that he wanted to create a country that has equal opportunity and fair process and just outcome. I thought it's a very moving, excellent speech. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened over the last 5 years. As you mentioned, the fairness has become a more serious issue. So I think for new government, how to address this fairness, it's a very, very important issue, but tough issue. And we know that during election campaign, PPP, People's Power Party, they're sort of promoting gender politics. But then it didn't really work out. So I don't think identity politics is a solution to this question about fairness. So I think how to ensure fair process and also creating opportunity for social mobility is very, very important. So in my view, Korea has become more class society. I think Korean elite has to be aware of this issue and trying to take more responsibility for the fairness in Korean society. Now I think about social justice and corruption. I mean, that's also a very important issue because certainly if you did anything wrong, then you have to be punished. But I really hope that the new government doesn't fall into temptation to launch another campaign to eradicate what they call deep-rooted evils, which happened under Moon Jae-in government. So once again, fairness, social justice, and corruption. These are very, very important issues. I hope that there will be some progress on those issues under the new government.
So we really need the rule of law to be effectively seen to. And well, there's concern actually that Yoon's traditionally pro-business party might overlook some important social welfare policies. Do you think they're going to pay enough attention to improving people's livelihoods? And what do you think are the key areas that they really need to prioritize amidst this worsening income polarization and rather dismal future prospects, especially for young people in South Korea?
I don't think his government, or for that matter, any government, can any longer overlook this welfare issue. I heard that now the new government is now proposing a supplementary bill, right, supporting about 5,000 plus to small to medium business. And certainly, still, Korea is not really out of the pandemic. And we know that Korea was fairly successful in containing virus, but at the sacrifice of small to medium business. So I think how to support, those SME is very, very important. And certainly, I expect the Yoon government maybe to get rid of some policies that were seen as socialist under Moon Jae-in government, and certainly more focus on market mechanism. For example, like housing policy, maybe giving more supply and so on. But at the same time, I don't think they can ignore social welfare. They have to have a balance between growth and distribution or also social welfare.
And Professor, President Yoon's move to relocate the presidential office to Yongsan-gu district in Seoul, which he has done, of course, it's generated a fair amount of criticism. The decision, of course, it's already been made, it's already happened, but what do you think he needs to do in order to make the move worth, just a load of money really worth this massive relocation? What would you like to see him do, really, to make the presidential office more transparent?
I think moving out of Blue House is nothing new. We know that previous candidate of president they were trying to get out of Blue House, but couldn't do that. For many reasons, a lot of practical reasons, and certainly you might question about the way he handled this move. Why not consulting more people, why you are rushing. But I think in terms of the idea of moving out of Blue House, once again, there's fairly strong argument for that. So, despite those some controversy and some concerns, I still believe that he did the right thing. Certainly that there will be some issues in the process. But eventually, after end of the day, I believe he made the right decision. Okay, so I think here one thing I like to highlight is that it's not so much about transparency, but then the way he will govern the country, because he was a career prosecutor, right? And he entered politics only last summer. And I think he improved a lot, over, within less than a year. But still, he has to show his political leadership, especially, dealing with opposition who controlled National Assembly. Also, he has to deal with a lot of civil society, NGO groups, and labor unions. So whether he has patience or values to respect democratic process, because it's not traditional or conventional political leader who would value negotiations and compromise. And then he made fame by fighting against abuse of power and corruption. but he's not going to fight against power anymore. He's in power. So how to use power to govern the country, I think that will be very important and big challenge for him.
And Professor, soon you're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Korea program at Stanford. So first of all,
yes.
Congratulations. And on
Thank
that
you.
note, what should be South Korea's role in the world going forward? Something that President Yoon has very much emphasized even before his presidency. Do you think South Koreans are ready to be more global and play a more positive role in the world to spread democratic values?
Right. So, despite all those problems and issues at home, Korea has really become a leading country in the world. Okay. So, maybe top 10 in economic power. Now, K-pop, has a lot of, attention in the world. But I don't think Korea has been playing its role in the global stage. Comparable with his economic, its economic, military or cultural power. So I mentioned about the threat to liberal international order earlier. Now I think Korea has to be more proactive in protecting and preserving international order in collaboration with allies like United States and Japan. European nation and so on. So, I mean, in the past, I've been sort of promoting what I call dolphin, diplomacy. So we may not be big country like US and or China, but still we can play. Korea can play a much more proactive role in the world. Now it's time to do so for South Korea. I really hope that the new government can take up the task.
Well, I'm afraid due to time, this is where we must leave the interview, Professor. But we do look forward to the release of your book, South Korea's Democracy in Crisis, coming out next month, right? And, well, hopefully there'll be a more optimistic title maybe after 5 years with your next book after the Yoon administration. But thank you so much, Professor Gi-Wook at Stanford University. It was a true privilege speaking with you.
Okay, thank you.